Hi, I'm Alison Taafe, the Sassy Chef. Today I'm going to show you how to use pasta and grains in your tuck shop to make some really healthy lunches for the kids. First of all, I'm going to use couscous, a little bit of crack wheat. I'm going to pop that into a bowl. There was about 250 grams there, and I'm just going to add just over double the amount of, or almost double the amount of water, 450 mils of boiling water, just going in there. And now I'm going to steam it. I'm going to put some Glad wrap over the top. And make sure you get a really good seal here because you want to keep all that moist, hot air inside this bowl. So make sure your Glad wrap is really tight. And what we're going to do now is not disturb that, not touch it, not do anything to it for about 10 minutes. We're just going to leave that to steam. I'm going to pop that over on the side, and then I'm going to start my tuna salad. So let me just pop that over there. Okay, so you can see here I've made a beautiful tuna and pasta salad. You can even use wholemeal pasta if you really want to health up your tuck shops. I've just used a normal penne pasta there, but anything goes. I try to avoid spaghetti and fettuccine, maybe some shells or some macaroni, anything that's easy and portable to get in your mouth with a fork, basically. Okay, so I've got some cooked pasta. Now, if you do cook pasta, make sure you have plenty of boiling water. We like to teach 10 parts of boiling water to 1 part pasta so that the pasta can roll around and stop getting too sticky, and sometimes it sticks together. Don't need to put any oil in the water, just a little bit of salt, and just boil it so it's just cooked. If you're going to cook it in advance, make sure you drain it. Make sure you run cold water over it so it completely gets cold, and you can put a little bit of oil in it to stop it from sticking overnight in the dish. Otherwise, sometimes it comes out in a solid lump. So let's put a little bit of pasta in here. And don't overcook the pasta. It needs to be a little bit al dente, a little bit to the tooth, as they say in Italy. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of dried sultanas in there. We're going to add a little bit of pumpkin seeds. We've got these beautiful pepita kernels. Adds a nice crunchiness to the salad. I'm also going to add a little bit of chopped sliced shallots. And let me show you how I did that. Grab one of those. I've already washed it. I'm going to just whip off the end. And if it is quite big, you might be wise just to cut it into half so that when you are chopping it, you get nice little pieces just like I have here, so you can see. Otherwise it can be a little bit strong in the mouth if you have it too large. So a little bit of green shallot is really lovely, nice onion taste, and it's not as strong and as acidic as normal onion, so that looks good. Pop that in there, also gives a little bit of colour and crunch to the actual salad as well, which is great. Pop a little bit of extra in there as well. Lovely. Okay, so now we need to put a little bit of colour into our salad. I'm going to grate some fresh carrot into the pasta salad. I'm going to try and get the whole palette of colours into this salad. The more colours, the more vitamins, the more goodness we're going to get into our kids' lunches. So I'm just going to add a little bit of grated carrot in there. Mind your nails, don't grate your nails into there. It's an extra bonus for the kids. Sometimes you may even have a food processor that has a grater on it, which is nice and easy. Okay, so just a little bit of grated carrot through that salad. Beautiful. Now I'm going to add a little bit of red capsicum. I wanted to show you how to dice this. It's not something that you cut every day. I've cut my capsicum down into 4 pieces, and let me just show you how I did that as well. Take the capsicum and I cut down one side, cut down the second side, the third side, and the fourth side. I even cut off the little bits at the end so I'm not wasting it. That way I don't have the seeds inside and I'm ready to cut straight away. It's a very, very quick, handy way of doing it. Okay, you might want to just cut out the little white centre pieces there because they can be a little bit bitter. Just get rid of that. So what I suggest you do to make a nice dice is to cut little lengths, and once again, cut on the inside of the capsicum. Don't try to test the knife on the outside. It can be quite hard to cut through. You want to get yourself a really good chef's knife, nice and sharp. It makes the salad look beautiful because all the food is cut nicely, and that in turn gives great presentation. So line all these little pieces up, and then just very carefully using that little knife technique where we're just rocking through. And the sharp knife is less likely to cut you than a blunt knife, so don't be frightened of it. Make sure it's nice and sharp. Get these beautiful little diced capsicums. So there's no seeds in there, none of that white centre piece, and just beautiful red diced capsicum. Perfect. All right. So what we'll do is put a little bit of tuna fish through this. Now you can, of course, add any cold meat that you like. Chicken's a great alternative as well. Tuna fish I've bought today that was in natural spring water. So we're trying to lower the sodium content. We're getting great protein here though. So tuna fish is a great healthy alternative. But like I say, some steamed or poached chicken is also a great thing to add here. So a little bit of flaked tuna fish going through there. Might put a little bit of diced Spanish onion in as well for a little bit of extra colour. And what I will do is pop a little bit of pepper in there. Now go easy on the salt. You have tuna fish, which is naturally salty. You don't want to add too much here. So as much pepper as you want. I don't mind that one. That's great. We may even use a few fresh herbs here as well, because fresh herbs give taste and flavour and can also help without too much seasoning on the salt side of things, which is great. So any fresh herbs that you can get your hands on. And you know, some of you in schools these days have herb gardens growing, which is great. So go out and ransack the kids' herb garden. Perfect. Anything goes for this one. And if all else fails, I suppose you could use a few dried herbs if you have to, but I appreciate that not all of you can get fresh herbs. But pretty sure that most of you can get hold of some parsley or something in the supermarkets. So a nice little shred, using that same technique as we just used for cutting that capsicum, just shredding through those herbs. And if you want to, you could even just pick through them and just break them up. Some people say that's even a better way of doing it, because then you're not cutting the herb and maybe running the risk of bruising it, which is not good. Okay, so let's get our tongs in there and give this a little bit of a mix through. So you can see how beautiful the colour is there. You know it's going to be healthy because it's got this array of beautiful, fresh, abundant colours, which is great. I'm going to use a little bit of olive oil in here. Now I'm choosing not to dress this one with mayonnaise. I'm trying to keep the fats healthy in the diet. So I'm going to use a bit of balsamic vinegar for this one. And I'm just going to dress this lightly with olive oil and balsamic. That way I'm not adding extra fat in the form of a mayo. But if you do want to use mayonnaise, you can use a nice light mayo variety if you wish. It's entirely up to you. Alright, so I haven't added any extra salt in there, and I don't think I need to, because I've got lovely flavours, the herbs are in there, all the beautiful extra vegetables are through there, and the balsamic and oil. It's a fantastic salad. I'm sure that everybody is going to love this one. So meanwhile, back at the couscous, which has been steaming nicely, I haven't touched it, I've resisted the urge to uncover it. So about 10 minutes, and you kind of know it's ready when all the couscous looks like it's stable. In other words, there's no water present. So whip off the Glad wrap, take a fork, and then just go through and fluff it up so you break up all those little granules, but not too heavy-handed, otherwise you're going to smash it up. So just fluffing it up nicely, get rid of a little bit of lump by just using the fork. And the fork is quite a light way of doing this. So you can see that 250 grams of couscous makes a lot of couscous. I'm just going to use a small amount of this today just to show you how to finish this off. So put that into this other bowl. Get myself a couple of lovely spoonfuls. You've got lovely, fluffy, beautiful, light couscous, which is great. Okay, so we've got a nice little bit in there. Just make sure I get rid of all those lumps. Perfect. Okay, just put that out the way. That stores quite nicely as well. You can keep that in the fridge for up to 2 days. Make sure it's covered all the time. So this looks a little bit bland at the moment. We've got to really health this up and get some lovely flavours and colours and textures into this one. Okay, I actually have a little bit of chicken going into this. Just to add a little bit of protein here, and it's low in fat. It's been poached or steamed. You can buy chicken already cooked, and if you do, what you need to do is cut up a very small dice of the chicken. So let me show you how I did that. Take a chicken breast, just cut it into slices. So just nice and thin slice, which is nice and easy. And then what you do is a little bit like the capsicum that we just did before actually. Cut it into strips. We chefs call this a julienne. It's rather, you know, a fancy technique, a fancy name for really just dicing and shredding. Let's chop that up into nice little fine manageable pieces. We're trying to get small pieces like the couscous, so it's nice and easy to eat. And you only need a fork or a spoon to eat this one as well, which is very easy. Okay, some beautiful cooked chicken. Now be careful when you're cutting up cooked chicken, it's fine on the board, but if you're cutting up any kind of raw chicken, make sure you whip the board into the wash up and use a new one. We don't want to have any contamination of raw food and raw meats in our salads. Okay, so the diced chicken goes into that couscous, so adding a little bit of extra protein in there. I've also got some pepita kernels. Now you know I love these, I used those before. Nice way of getting a crunch in there without using nuts, so that's perfect. They give a nice colour as well, and also, as I said, texture, which is important. Some spring onions, which I showed you how to cut before with the pasta and tuna salad. A little bit of spring onion in there. And a little bit of diced onion. I haven't showed you how to cut a diced onion, and I want to do that. So I'm using a Spanish onion because Spanish onion's a little bit milder in taste, and it's a little bit sweeter as well. So I'm just going to cut down the onion like so. I'm going to use my little knife to take the top and bottom off. And I'm just going to then whip off the peel, like so. Make sure I wipe my board down. Now what I want you to do with this one, I'll just move these out the way so you guys can see nicely as well, is have a look where the root of the onion was on one side, And then just cut little tiny cuts, and only 2/3 or 3/4 of the way up. This is the root end where the root was in the onion. It holds it together nicely for you. So cut little tiny thin cuts, and then maybe change knives. And what you need to do is cut a little bit into the onion, just like so. Cut a little bit into the onion that way, and then, hey presto, when you cut down, you end up with this beautiful diced onion. And no tears, because I haven't cut the onion all over the board, so I'm not getting all that acid in my eyes. So I've got the beautiful little chopped onion. Easy, you can show your friends that one and really show off, they're going to love it. So pretty much I don't need any more of that into my dish. So we're done. Okay, so the onions are in there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of chopped dates. This is for sweetness. So a little bit of natural sugar in the form of dates. You can use sultanas in here. You can even use apricots if you like. So get the date and just cut it into half. And then be careful, because the dates are a bit sticky when you're chopping it, and I'd hate for you to cut yourself. So be very, very careful. Just cut little bite-sized pieces of the date, just like so, and pop those in. As I said, sultanas or even prunes or even apricots, anything really to add a bit of sweetness in there. Pop the rest of those in there. I think we're almost good to go with that one. The only thing missing is a little bit of citrus. We're going to add some lemon and some oranges. I'm going to use a microplane zester. And if you haven't got one of those, don't panic. You can use a grater. But a good trick with the grater is put a bit of Glad wrap over the grater first, press it into the small part of the grater, and as you are taking the zest off the orange, when you lift the Glad wrap off, it's all there. You aren't going to be chasing it through the grater. So it's a very, very good tip. Okay, so if you have a microplane, great. Just get a little bit of zest off in there. This adds a little bit of freshness and a bit of zing to this couscous. Couscous can be a little bit bland. It's a bit like rice. It depends what you add to it. That's what's going to give us the flavour. So I'm going to add a little bit of orange juice. I've already got my zest in there. Just be careful of the pips. Beautiful orange juice and a bit of lemon juice in there. That's going to be our dressing. I'm not using vinegar. I'm going to use citric acid as the acid in my vinaigrette dressing for this one. And a little bit of lemon juice. And the last little thing in there is a little bit of seasoning and a little bit of oil, and we're done. So beautiful. Okay. A little bit of cold pressed olive oil going through there. So we are looking to lower the fat content of food, and olive oil is a great way of adding some good fats into our diets. So let's just toss that around. Now before we mix it any further, I am going to add my salt and pepper now. And I'm going to put some fresh herbs in there too. Now if you can get hold of fresh herbs, perfect. Use parsley, dill, coriander, whatever you can get your hands on. And if you can't, don't panic. It doesn't matter. It's your tuck shop. You can do whatever you want. Make sure it just looks good and tastes great. That's what we're after. A little bit of salt, not too much. Make sure we keep this low sodium if we can. And just toss it through. And if you think it needs a little bit of extra seasoning, it's always easier to add a touch more than it is to try and take it out, right? Okay, so what I want to do is grab a little bit of fresh coriander, because I'm lucky because I've got beautiful herbs here. A little bit of fresh dill, and maybe a little bit of parsley, whatever you can get your hands on, I don't mind. And a little shred through at the last minute. And I wouldn't put these herbs in too early, folks, because you want them to stay nice and green and vibrant. It's all about freshness for us. I'm really happy with that couscous. It takes probably less than 5 minutes to make. It's really great. So what a great way of actually healthing up and greening up your tuck shops at school. I think it's great. It's a good way of promoting healthy, smart choices for your school. Now don't panic if you haven't followed the ingredients and the recipes as quickly as I've gone through them. You can always go to the Smart Choices website and you can download the recipes straight away. Thanks very much for watching, folks. I'm Alison, the Sassy Chef. That's my couscous. That's my tuna and pasta, folks. See you.